In continuing our discussion of the last video, I want to make it clear that in no way do I agree with the venues that Rabbi Riskin has taken upon himself. These are things that, if they are clearly against the directives of his teachers and my teachers, then we're not supposed to engage in them. That's a clear thing. What I am objecting to is the characterization that there is no obligation for the Jewish people to teach the rest of the world. That's not true. Maimonedes clearly says this, and even though you quote Rabbi Broide, who quotes several Rishonim, several authorities that object to Maimonides, they're not objecting to Maimonides' general principle. They're objecting to Maimonides' idea that not only are we supposed to teach the other people in the world, we're actually supposed to enforce it. And that, they say, is not the purview of the individual. That, they say, is the purview of the court. And the court has different rules, and therefore this is not for the individual to mete out punishments or to force people to do anything. That said, there's a separate issue of teaching. And on this principle that we're supposed to teach and influence the rest of the world, no one disagrees. In fact, the main authority that is cited, which is Ravad, who is the main opponent of Maimonides, Ravad does not issue any kind of objection on this statement that is found in Maimonides in the 8th chapter of the Laws of Kings, Halacha 10. He doesn't issue any objection to this. In other words, this that Maimonides says that Moses was commanded by God to tell us to get the entire world to fulfill the 7 commandments, that he has no objection with. The only objection he has is as to who has to enforce it. We have an obligation to teach, but not necessarily an obligation to enforce. And in fact, the obligation to teach is seen directly from our first Jew, Avram Avinu, Abraham. Abraham went and taught the whole world that there's Kei Olam, there's a God in the world, and that you have to worship this God, and you must follow this God's directives. What was he teaching them? He wasn't teaching them about bris milah, about circumcision. He wasn't teaching them about the Jewish prayers. He wasn't teaching them about all the things that Abraham did in his own private life. Rather, he must have been teaching them about the 7 commandments of Noah. So you see that this is something which is very, very basic in Jewish life. And none of the Achronim, none of the Rishonim, none of the authorities question Maimonides on this. Rather, they question as to whether we have the obligation to enforce it, or this is something that has to be enforced by a court, and since we have no high court, it is unenforceable at the present time. But the obligation nonetheless stands, and Rabbi Riskin should be commended for his efforts to teach the Gentiles, although the exact venue can be questioned. But in general, we do have an obligation of teaching the world, and whoever teaches the world the 7 commandments and gets people to follow the 7 commandments, Tavo Aleichem Bracha, they will be blessed for their efforts for making the world a better world.